Hi, welcome back to Keep It Dirty, a podcast where my guests share their life living functionally and sustainably, and the why behind their experiences navigating through our ever-changing environment. I am your host, Leslie Dowling. I'm a corporate speaker sharing how one can jumpstart your path to increase revenue and productivity through restorative health techniques. And today, it is my pleasure to have back my sweet dear friend who we met on Clubhouse, Larry Penton. He is a fire medic. He is also the CEO of Penton Pending Consulting Solutions. He is also a Stop the Bleed instructor, an active violent incidents consultant, podcaster, public and mental health advocate. It's great to see you back, Larry. How are you?
Great. Every time and every day I wake up on this side of the dirt, that means I'm still destined to do whatever I'm supposed to do. The day that I don't, I'm good. I'm done. I don't have anything else I was supposed to do. And I just hope and pray that I was able to contribute to the betterment of humanity.
I love that. So you have done so much for community, your services over the years. Thank you. And I'd love to hear what your projects are, what's going on with your life. It's been a while since we spoke. So what are you up to?
Wow. Well, I will start with I recently, about a year ago, got my American Heart Association CPR certification. This is one of many that I've earned over my EMS and fire career since 2006. And then I retired in 2020. Even though I'm retired actively, I'm not on a pumper or a fire truck, as most people know it, or an ambulance. I still feel like a first responder. So most of the work that I do comes, they call it tactical medical responders or tactical medical providers. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing since I retired has been teaching people how to survive in these real times. So whether it's violent critical incidents, now that term is supposed to be the new term from active shooter hostile events, or most people just say active shooter. The reason that the government is getting ready to change it from active shooter to violent critical incidents is every incident that you see in these breaking news stories does not involve a firearm. Like the incident that happened at the University of Idaho where those 4 students were killed. They weren't killed with a firearm. They were killed with a sharp-edged weapon. And so most of the press revolves around firearm incidents because that's going to always get the cameras and people responding and talking. However, think about the Boston Marathon fiasco. It was an explosive. Think about the Travis Scott concert that happened. Those people, there was no weapons at all. People were getting crushed. They called it traumatic asphyxiation, and people were going into cardiac arrest. So that became a mass casualty incident. So we teach and train people how to survive in those situations. You can be at a concert venue, a house of worship, an academic institution, business, in the public. You can be at a sporting event. You can be anywhere. I always say that it's not a matter of if, but when and where a violent incident is going to happen or an emergency is going to happen. What are you going to do if you get caught up in this situation? So the work that I do and some of the people that I work with is teaching tactical medical responses or tactical emergency casualty care. And the reason I say tactical is because think about what happened in my beloved home state of Missouri. The Kansas City Chiefs, go Chiefs, won the Super Bowl and they had the parade. Well, there was a shooting that happened. Person died, multiple people were injured. And so those incidents create a big call out for everybody and their mama to show up. Police, fire, EMS, all the alphabet boys and girls show up and all of this. The press shows up. Everybody's got their phone out and recording. So we teach people, what do you do in those situations if you're at a parade and you hear gunfire, or you see something that's happened where somebody uh, maybe got into a fight and now there's a major bleed from that person? How do you deal with that? What if somebody's in cardiac arrest? Or even if it's not, you could be just walking through the park and somebody could be playing and they just fall out. Uh, what do you do to help this person other than just grabbing your phone and hitting the record button and going live? Because we see that a lot. Now, I say I don't have a problem with people picking up their phone and recording. Can you at least call 911 first? Just call 911 first. I mean, that's the main function of a phone, right? It's to, call people.
Sure.
See 50 to 100 or more people recording, and there's nobody calling 911. So we talk about those things. We call it situational awareness. So I teach a lot about that stuff. The work that I'm doing now really focuses more on some of the basic stuff: first aid, CPR, stop the bleed, using AD, learning about Narcan and how it works. Because you can buy Narcan now on Amazon. You don't need a prescription or anything like that. We know we're still in this opioid crisis, and it's getting worse because the fentanyl is being utilized and mixed in with a lot of different things. Marijuana is being put in all kind of stuff or whatever, and it's such a high concentration that it's literally killing people the first time that they use it, or putting them in a life-threatening situation. So we talk about those things. I've partnered with a number of executive protection professional companies. Now, executive protection is the term that now is used by people that do security, personal security, private security, and it's primarily for those that are celebrities, VIPs, and different things like that. So these individuals are high level people, and they want us to come in and teach medical essentials to the people that are learning how to become emergency or not emergency, excuse me, executive protection professionals. Because if you have a client who, let's say, a Taylor Swift, you're her bodyguard, and something happens to her, because we see like Madonna, she just fell on stage the other day doing a routine. Or sometimes you'll see one of these artists, they'll crowd surf, and sometimes people don't catch them, when they jump off stage or what have you. What do you do to help this person who now has a medical injury? What if they have a major bleed? What if they have gone into cardiac arrest? So I teach people how to deal in those situations. What do you do? So here's a question that I'll ask. If you, Leslie, are walking with Finnegan in the park and you see somebody laid out, they're bleeding, they got a major arterial bleed, and they're in cardiac arrest, which means no pulse, no respiration, still clinically dead. What do you do first? Do you stop the bleed or do you do CPR?
That's a good question. Well, I'd call 911 first because I'm old school. I'm not going to start taking a video. And we're always prone to do CPR. But if they're bleeding out, you'd want to stop the bleed. But you're telling me this person is, you know. So inquiring minds want to know, what do we do?
For those that say CPR first, in that scenario, 100% that person's going to die.
Mm.
And here's why. CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Remember, your heart basically is a pump. What is it pumping? It's pumping
Yeah.
blood, circulating through your body to give it oxygen through your red blood cells. And then it takes that deoxygenated blood, goes to the lungs and get reoxygenated, and it starts all back over. Well, if that person is bleeding out, and we're talking an arterial bleed, a massive bleed, you can't put that blood that's on the ground or soaked in their clothes back into that person's body. So you have to stop the bleeding first. You have to do hemorrhage control, bleeding control. And then once you get that bleeding under control, then you do the CPR. Because if you do CPR first, all you're doing is expediting the process of that person. It's called exsanguination or bleeding out mass.
Wow. Yeah.
All you're doing is making that go a lot quicker. And a person can bleed out in 3 to 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
You know,
Wow.
your body has about 2 2 liter bottles worth of blood in. And so as that blood is leaking out, it's carrying, that's the only thing that can give your body the oxygen and nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
Not normal saline, because we'll hook up somebody to normal saline, but that person needs bright lights, cold steel, and they need blood. And there's a lot of EMS services now that are starting to carry blood on their ambulances, O negative, that anybody can receive that because they may not make it to the hospital, especially if you live in a rural environment or if you live in somewhere like LA and you're on the 405 and it's rush hour. They might have to call in a medevac to get that person to the hospital. But again, time is not on your side. And so we teach people about those things, why it's important to do bleeding control. What is the difference between a regular first aid kit and an IFAC, which is an acronym for individual first aid kit? Because your regular first aid kit is just going to have Band-Aids and ointment and some aspirin and stuff in it. But your IFAC is going to have tourniquets. It's going to have chest seals. It's going to have hemostatic gauzes, which helps the clotting process. It'll have an emergency blanket because you want to keep that person from going into hypothermia. You can go into hypothermia and be in a hot environment, and so we talk about a lot of those things, but primarily we focus on situational awareness just as much as we do the hands-on stuff, because I'm going to use you and I as the living examples. I'm about 175 pounds on a good day. You're a little slimmer than I am, and that's okay. If you and I are in the park, I'm sitting on the bench and I'm all on my phone I don't know if this is going to be shown, but I'm in the park and I got my smartphone, I got my iPhone, and I'm doing my YouTube video analytics and I'm texting and I'm listening to music and all this stuff. I'm not really tripping out. It's a nice day outside and all that. You, on the other hand, you're watching everything and everybody that's coming in the park, out of the park. You know what people got on, who has a dog, who is, maybe a little too close to the playground and paying a little bit too much attention to the kiddies and all this stuff. You see everything and everybody that's going on. Who's going to be the likely victim of a crime? You or me? It's going
You
to be
could.
me all day, every day, and twice on Sunday because you're paying attention. We call
Yeah.
it the color circle, the color code circle of awareness. And if you're not paying attention to your surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
I use training uh, things. I like visual aids. So I'm
Yeah.
holding up a plastic model of a Glock. It's no metal, no moving parts, no ammo. I got it off eBay for $13. And it's easy for somebody, if I'm on my phone sitting on the park bench and I'm, doing my uh, football, fantasy football or whatever, it's easy for somebody to come up to me and be like, hey, give me everything that you got in
Yeah.
your on you. I didn't even see this person come. I didn't hear him, didn't see him. They could have been doing cartwheels and singing, America the Beautiful. And I wasn't even paying attention. I was totally oblivious. You, on the other hand, may prevent that from happening because you might be like, hey, turn around. You got somebody that's coming up on you or somewhere. You might, be real smooth with it. Like, hey, what's going on with you? I know you don't know me, but there's a guy that's kind of been checking you out and he looks like he might be up to something or whatever.
Mm.
You may save my life.
Yeah. Wow.
So these are things that we talk about, especially with women,
Mm-hmm.
because women are not the only people that could get victimized, men too. And we talk to women about how you can not be a victim, also how you can help people that might be potentially victims, even if you don't want to get involved in terms of maybe going up to that person and saying something or whatever. Again, calling 911, making a whole bunch of noise or something like that, doing something that's going to attract a lot of attention. You know, those are things that will help people not become a victim. So it's about learning how to survive in these real times. One of the things that I talk to people about is not only learning CPR, but learning how to use these tourniquets,
Mhm.
because tourniquets are the best thing that can help in a situation where somebody's hemorrhaging from their limbs. You can't put a tourniquet on the neck if somebody got shot in the neck or stabbed in the neck because they're going to die. You know, you can't put a tourniquet on the chest area because the tourniquet is not made for it. It's only made for the limbs. For the chest area, from the neck to the navel, and in between, we call that the box. So that's where chest seals come into play. You can get some saran wrap. You can get the plastic off for dry cleaning, trash can liners. You can use any type of plastic or even your hand to cover up that stab wound or that knife wound, because you don't want that negative pressure from that hole that's been put in that person, whether it's a firearm or a knife or some sharp instrument, to cause those lungs to collapse and put pressure on your heart to make it stop beating. So we talk about all of those things. I also want people to know how to do other basic first aid. Learn how to do the Heimlich. Learn how to do just some basic first aid skills. Because in a situation where, let's go back to you and I being an example. Because I teach on violent critical incidents or active shooter stuff. So we teach the concept called run, hide, fight. You and I, Leslie, are getting ready to go in the mall and do some shopping. My treat. I go and, we get out the car and we're walking towards the mall and we hear gunfire.
Mm.
The first thing I'm going to look at you and say is, I need you to do everything that I'm getting ready to tell you. And I'm going to sound like Tommy Lee Jones from The Fugitive and U.S. Marshals. Please don't take it personally. I'm not bossing you around. I'm doing what I can do to help us in this situation get out of it as healthy, happy, and whole and alive as possible. I need you to be my eyes, my ears. I may need you to write down stuff. I may need you to remember stuff, times, what people are wearing, all of these things. Because my mind is going to be mapping and doing all kinds of stuff or whatever. The first thing I'm going to say to you is, I need you to stick to me like Peter Pan's shadow. Then we're going to get as far away, wherever that gunfire is, we call it getting off the X. Wherever that gunfire is, we're going to be 180 degrees away from it. And I'm going to be like, hey, if you got on some heels, you might want to take them off because we're about to run. So that's the run concept. And it goes deeper into that, but you want to get away from where the gunfire is, because there's 3 zones that you are going to be learning about: hot zone, warm zone, cold zone. Hot zone is where everything is happening. The only people that are going to be in that hot zone are the people that were there when it started, and law enforcement is going to come in. These are the SWAT teams. These are the tactical teams. There's going to be also a tactical paramedic that's going to be embedded with them. So there was a news story the other day about 2 police officers and a fire medic who was a tactical paramedic who got killed responding to a call in Burnsville, Minnesota. And so that TAC team and that medic, their job is to go in and neutralize the threat. The medic's job is not to find and help the people that are hurt, injured, dying, and dead like we normally do. That TAC medic's job is to be the medic for those SWAT officers that he's embedded in. It might be 4 or more. But that medic's job is only to do medical work on anybody that's in that SWAT team. Now, they'll make notes of who's hurt, who's injured, who's dying, who's dead as they go through to neutralize the threat or the threats. Outside of that hot zone, we call it the warm zone. So this is maybe like if we're in the mall, if the shooting happened inside the mall is the hot zone. The perimeter outside of the mall is the warm zone. This is where you'll have additional resources lining up to go in to provide support. As people are running out, they'll tell them, hey, keep your hands up, run this way. You know, who's hurt, who's injured, who's not hurt. We call them whoever's not hurt, we call them they're considered green. You know, hey, you all go over here and we may need you to help us if we need to do some first aid stuff or whatever. Anybody that's injured, they're going to be the yellow or red. Red is always bad. And then if they're deceased, call them, they're black. But it's called a START triage, START, simple triage and rapid transport. And so there's a whole, I would say, protocol that we follow as first responders in these situations. And we talk about this stuff. For the hide portion, that's where, let's say we are, again, walking in and we can't get out. Let's say we got in the mall, but for some reason we just can't get out. We're going to hide. We're going to hide like ninjas. We're going to hide wherever we can hide and be as quiet as a church mouse. While we're hiding, there's 2 things that people have to learn about: cover and concealment. Cover shields, concealment hides. If I put my hands up against my face, that's concealment because you can't see my face, but I can still be hurt. If I go behind this solid wall on the other side of my office, somebody's shooting into that other room. I may not get hit because that bullet has to go through, and as it's penetrating layers, it's going to start breaking up. I just have to hope that I'm not in the line of fire. So that's how cover and concealment works. So we're going to be as invisible as possible, and we're going to get behind some solid objects as possible. If we're in the parking lot and it happens, and let's say for whatever reason we really can't run anywhere to safety, I'm going to say, hey, let's get behind this car. We're not going to get behind the doors or the trunk area. We're going to hide behind the engine block, still being concealed, because that engine block is going to deflect and absorb and break apart a lot of those bullets that are being fired our way or wherever. So those are some of the things that we talk about. And if you're hiding in an office or in a room or something like that, let's say you're at a school or what have you, you barricaded in, we're going to put everything in that room up to that door. I don't care if it's some paper, I don't care if it's a desk, I don't care what's in, whatever we can move in that room is going to go up against the door. The last thing is the fight, because that person or those people may breach that door or wherever you are hiding out. Those things that we put up against that door, those are weapons. If they're not weapons, they're distractions. I might say, if it's 5 of us in the room and we're in a classroom, I might say, we're going to take this ream of paper, which is about 1,000 sheets, and while we're sitting in here waiting for the police to come, we're going to ball up every piece of paper in this room. 1 or 2 of you all are going to be throwing these things if somebody comes in the room. The other people in the room, we're going to take pencils, pens, chairs, books, whatever we got in that room, we're going to make weapons out of it. And we're going to fight like a cornered animal. So as soon as that door opens, we're going to just start throwing stuff at the door and all of that stuff or whatever. And we're going to go on the attack because, hey, if I'm going down with a fight. And we may just be lucky. I don't care if that person has an AR-15, which doesn't stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armor-Light, which is the company that makes the rifle. So we got to know these terms. I also talk about public health, public safety, and gun safety. I don't get into the politics, the 2A or the Second Amendment stuff. So, again, when we're talking about firearms, we talk about you can Google the 4 universal safety rules when it comes to firearms. And very simple, here's how you can remember it. Remember this word, tank, like an army tank. T, treat all firearms as if they're loaded and do a clearance check to make sure that there's no round in it or in the magazine, not the clip, because the clip is what you put on Facebook or whatever, or reel. It's a magazine. That's where the bullets are stored. So treat all firearms as they're loaded. Do a clearance check to make sure that there is no round in the chamber before you handle it or hand it off to somebody else. That's T. A, always know what your backstop is and where you're shooting. There was a situation some years ago in LA where a guy went into a mall, had a knife, and was attacking people. LAPD responded. They tried to get him to surrender. He wouldn't. They ended up firing 3 rounds at the guy. 1 round missed. That round went through a wall. And on the other side of that wall was a dressing room. And in that dressing room was a teenager who was hit by that round and died. Mm. Now, the officer didn't know that that person was hit until they found that person. But again, when you have a weapon in your hand, you're responsible for every round that comes out of it. And never point your weapon at anything that you're not willing to destroy. I don't care if it's a firearm, a knife, a number 2 sharpened pencil, whatever. To me, that's the most important because when you decide to commit an act of self-defense or whatever, when you pick up a weapon, any weapon that you pick up, you have time to think, do you want to actually use this to hurt somebody or worse? And then K, keep your finger off the trigger and outside of the trigger guard until you have acquired your target and are ready to shoot. Those are the 4 universal safety rules. You can Google it and all this stuff. So we talk about those things all the time. Finally, I'll say this. I know that people don't like talking about these things, these firearms and stuff. Here's what I say. When was the last time you saw a breaking news story about a kid who died because they got electrocuted because they stuck a knife or a pair of scissors? Or I got this little sharp pointy metal ruler. You know, they stuck it in the outlet. You don't see those stories, Harley. You know why? I'll tell you. Because once a kid can say mama or dada and can start moving and crawling around, we threaten those kids within an inch of the life. Hey, you don't touch that outlet. You don't look at it. Don't breathe on it. Don't be near it. Like wherever it is, you or somewhere else, we buy these covers and all that stuff to plug in. You know, we childproof the homes. Same conversation can be applied to the firearm. Yeah. Exchange the outlet for the weapon. Exchange the lighters and the flammable stuff and anything that's a danger in your home. Swap that out with the firearm. It's the same damn conversation. Mm-hmm. I haven't said anything about Republican. I didn't say anything about Democrat. I didn't say anything about 2A. I didn't say any of those things. I don't have to because it's about public safety and public health and gun safety. Also, gun locks, most first responders, police, fire, and EMS will give gun locks. In my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, the St. Louis Public Library now gives gun locks out. So those are things that I and the people that I work with teach the general public, private citizens, businesses, houses of worship, and so on and so forth. This is what we do to help teach people how to survive in these real times.
Wow. That is a wealth of information, and I'm just trying to store this in my brain. And I had a quick question. I mean, is it mandated, or it depends on where you live and what state? For people that are in the educational, the teachers that should know these protocols, and because teaching and the environment that these teachers are in has changed dramatically from years ago. So is that something that you go into the schools and you educate not only the kids, but the teachers and the staff on what we need to do to keep ourselves and the children safe under
Absolutely.
situations?
Yeah, we want to do a lot more with the academic institutions. There's still this stereotype that people have based upon where they live:
Mm,
urban, suburban, and rural environments. In a lot of the urban environments now, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, which has been for decades either the murder capital of the U.S. or in the top three. We had our first school shooting about 2 years ago at one of the high schools. Teacher and the student died,
mm,
and the shooter was killed. And so, and thankfully, by the quick action of the St. Louis Metro Police Department, they neutralized the threat. A lot of schools don't want people like me coming in and doing this because they start thinking, I don't want my school to look like a fortress. It doesn't happen here at our school. That only happens in these neighborhoods and these environments. Martin Luther King said, and this is Black History Month, one of his best quotes, he said, there's nothing worse than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. I add a word to that. I say sincere intentional ignorance, because we all don't know everything. It's not your fault if you don't know. It's your fault if you don't find out. So if I point out something to you that you didn't know, the onus is on you at that point. And we can't have these, oh, it won't happen here, or we've never had those issues. Or, I was talking to someone recently, and they were talking about metal detectors in school. And they were like, well, I don't want my kid to go to that school district if they don't have, because they got metal detectors and all this stuff. And I'm like, so you want your kid to potentially go into a situation where a kid may bring a weapon in and they could have been detected if there was metal detectors there? And it's more probable than possible that there's going to be a school shooting at a school anywhere in the U.S. Doesn't matter what, K through 12, post secondary, all of that stuff. Nobody is immune to this stuff. And so when we have these conversations with these teachers and administrators and different things like that, I had a school tell me one time, can you just send us a pamphlet and maybe show us a YouTube video or something like that? Maybe a 10-minute video? Yeah. I think that's all we need. I think that'll be good enough. And I said, I could do that. What are you going to do as the teacher, the administrator? You're in class, you're in the office, school's going on, and next thing you know, you hear pop, 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 pop. You're not gonna be like, Mr. or Miss active shooter, can you hold on while I kind of bring up this video, or let me find this pamphlet to see what LP told me to do or
right.
whatever. No, because like Mike Tyson said, everybody wants to be a boxer until they get punched in the mouth. Well, I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But when the bullets start flying and you hear that sound, that's when the rubber hits the road. What do most people do? They panic and they scatter, and
Yeah.
it's chaos. So we talk about that, especially what if you have special needs kids in these schools?
Mm,
How do
yeah.
you deal with it? If it's a multi-story school building, two, three, four, 5 stories, how are these kids on the upper floors going to get out? If it's a climate controlled school where you can't even really open the windows or anything like that, what do you do? How do you get out? How do you keep these people safe? And so we talk about, hey, what are your emergencies as a parent or a caregiver? The first question that you should ask whatever school your child or your whoever's in your care attends is what and where are your emergency operation plans or EOP, I'm sorry. Every school, house of worship, business, grocery store, wherever should have an emergency operations plan. If they don't have one, you need to exit stage left real quick. If they can't tell you, hey, we got an AD and we got a number of them and we keep them here, when you go in the grocery store, you should see where the ADs are, at least a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to answer your question, going back to the school stuff, the hardest thing is to get parents and administrators to, have a reality check that, you know what, your school may be targeted any day of the week. It doesn't matter what type of school or if you're in an urban or suburban or rural environment. Again, my hometown of St. Louis had its first school shooting. It's been a murder capital of the U.S. for decades. So it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what school your kid is in. If you're not ready, you're going to be attending some great funerals.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to be blunt. I don't know how to be anything
Yeah.
else. I'm just going to be bluntly honest, not brutally honest, because that's a different conversation. If you're not prepared, you're going to be attending some great funerals. That's it. That's all.
It's an experience that nobody would ever want their child or for someone to go through, but you have to be prepared, like you said. You can't just live under blankets and just thinking that this can never happen to me, to my family. And that's the problem. Um, and so it's always such a pleasure to have you on as my guest because you have such a wealth of knowledge and it's things that our world has grown, evolved, changed in good ways and also in ways that we just have to be proactive, right?
Absolutely. Especially
Um,
with mental health, because we talk a lot about
yes.
mental health, a lot about mental
Yeah.
health. Yeah, mental health crisis. I say mental health crisis is the world's oldest continuous pandemic that's been around since the beginning of mankind. It ain't going nowhere until we deal with these stigmas, taboos, and stereotypes, and so on and so forth. When it comes to trauma, anybody can get it and anybody can give it. And whether you're talking about adverse childhood experiences or ACEs, whether you're talking about metaphysical modalities, the work that you do with Reiki, I'm like, man, I slept on Reiki because you do Reiki with horses and, I'm like, who knew? And it's just amazing. So on my podcast called the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, all 4 words shameless plug, we deal with individuals like yourself, and I interviewed you, and we
Hmm.
talked about
Yeah.
that. We talked about not only your story and the work that you do as a practitioner, but also the modalities. How do we? Because we don't just trauma dump. What are the modalities? What are you doing to help people that are suffering in this situation? Because if it's just about conversation with no modality component, I'm out. Don't include me. I don't want to be a part of it. I can sit on my couch and binge watch anything and pick the lint out of my belly button before I get thrown into one of these trauma dumping conversations. What is the game plan to help people who are hurting, who are injured, who are dying and dead, not just physically, mentally, metaphysically, all of these components. Sitting on somebody's couch for 45 minutes doing a Q&A is not going to help everybody. Medication, which has its place and is needed in situations, is not the only answer. Everything does not get fixed with a pill. So these metaphysical modalities, Reiki, NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy. I interviewed a woman who helps people that have survived trafficking, domestic violence, sexual-based offenses for over 30 years. You know what she uses? It's called shadow work. Uses
Mm.
crystals and tarot cards. The first 15 minutes of that interview, all we did was dispel all the misconceptions about witches, warlocks, and demonology and all this stuff or whatever. Because she's like, I'm a practicing Christian. I carry a
Yeah.
Catholic. I carry my rosaries. I go to church all the time, all of
Mm-hmm.
this stuff. And it was a great interview because we were honest and we were forthcoming and it wasn't fluff and it wasn't BS or anything like that. So when you do your work with Reiki, I'm sure that sometimes people give you that kind of side of like,
Yeah. My husband, until I did Reiki on him, and then he was a believer once he went through the energy work and he was just blown away.
yeah,
So, and
breath
that's
work, all
fine.
that stuff. Right.
Like you don't have to be a believer, but the people that are interested, that are attracted to, have curiosity, um, those are the people that will be coming into my realm, and that's fine.
You know, one thing I love about you, Leslie, I love the energy that you put out because I'm sure that you have had clients that have the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst experiences in life. Not all,
Yeah.
but enough. And you, as a practitioner, you know what you are before you're a practitioner? You're a human being. You
Mm.
got feelings and emotions and all this stuff, just like me.
Yeah.
So when I was active as a fire medic, before I would go home, but before I would go to work, I would tell Mrs. LP, my beloved wife, hey, you know what? I want to leave here happy, healthy, and whole, and I want to come back the same way. If I'm having a bad shift, a 48-hour shift at the firehouse or what have you, I want to be able to talk to people like my partners. I want to be able to talk to my wife and my family members. Maybe not about specifics or the blood and guts, but I want
Hmm.
to be able to have communications with them because at the end of the day, put all of this aside, the uniform and the badge and the licenses and the certifications. I'm a living, breathing person just like you are. And there's so many first responders and people like yourself who I consider healthcare professionals. You're a clinician just like me. You're a practitioner just like me. I'm going to put some respect on your name and who you are because if you don't believe that Reiki works, well, how long has Reiki been around, Miss Dowling?
Thousands of years.
Thousands.
Of
Say it again.
years. Yeah.
Say it. You
Thousands.
get the nosebleed seats. Thousands of
Oh,
years, right?
thousands. Oh my gosh.
Thousands of years.
Pretty
That's just
wild.
Reiki. We're not even talking about all the other stuff.
Right.
So we got to get these mental blocks out of our way because people are hurting, injured, and
Hmm.
they're dying, and they're dead inside. And what are we going to do if it's not a matter if, but when and where an emergency is going to happen. So when you get these clients coming to you, they are in emergencies.
Yeah.
They may not be having a heart attack. They may not be stroking out. But you know what? It's coming.
Hmm.
It's better that they see you first because if they got to see me, we're way past all of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Now we got to get this person physically stabilized. I might have to defibrillate them. I might have to do CPR on them, get them stabilized, and then the post care is, hey, you know what? Maybe you should talk to this woman named Leslie Dowling. She does some work with mental health and Reiki and all this stuff. Before you call 911 and get somebody like me on the phone, they
Hmm.
should call somebody like you and say, you know what? As a preventative measure, preventative medicine, because we're practitioners. This is the practice of medicine, folks. As a paramedic, you know what the technical term for a paramedic is, Leslie? I'll tell you. Physician surrogate.
Mm.
We're physician surrogates. We work
Yeah.
under a medical doctor's license. Before you pick up the phone and call 911 because you're stressing out about your baby daddy or some breaking news story or something like that, or whatever the situation is, they might want to pick up the phone and call you and say,
Hmm.
you know what? I'm having issues with that. How can you help me with your specialty?
Right.
Because if you help them, it may not, they may not decompensate to the point where they got to pick up the phone and call 911 and then somebody like me shows up. Because if I show up, it's bad.
Serious business. Yep.
I want you
Absolutely.
to get all the work in the world because I can be on call. You know, when I was on duty, I could be on. If I'm working at the firehouse, we did 48-hour shifts, so 2 days on, 4 days off. If I never got a call in those 2 days, I'm good. I'd rather them call you. I'd rather those tones not go off because we got all kind of stuff we can do at the fire. I can read, I can play games, I can look at TV, I can exercise, I can have my family come over. We could go out in the neighborhood and do, put in batteries for people smoking. There's all kind of crap that I can do at the firehouse. Like, I ain't got to just sit there and just, oh, well, it's only so much cleaning you can do, But I'd rather them call you first and talk with you. And you may have other resources for them also that they can utilize to help them with their issue. So even though I specialize in the stuff that I talked about before, I never forget to mention or fail to mention, hey, before you call somebody like me, I got other people that are friends and partners that I can recommend you to in these situations. Because again, with our podcast, we talk about trafficking and domestic violence and sexual based offenses and true crime and missing persons. You don't
Hmm.
think that I want to have your phone blowing up? We all gonna eat.
Right.
We all gonna eat. Call Leslie. Call her. You're a master Reiki practitioner, right?
I would hope so. I've helped people, and we all have a gift.
We all have
And
a gift. So I'm not. I'm feeding into you when I'm
hmm
talking to other people because that energy that you bring and have brought when we met, I felt it. I still feel it. I
um,
I feel it with Tiffany,
yeah.
our friend. I still feel it.
Hmm.
And I want to continue that work that she was doing. Also,
Yeah.
me, you, Kirk, Melissa. I know we haven't talked much, but you know what? We still got this symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
And we ain't going nowhere. As long as we can wake up on this side of the dirt, I know that there's still stuff for us to do, like I said earlier. So we're gonna do some great work collectively and individually, and we're gonna give homage to our friend Tiffany Warner. Peace be upon her eternal soul forever.
Yep.
Because we
She's,
loved her.
she was
Not
amazing.
loved.
Yeah.
We love her.
Yes. I feel her energy. She's always around, and she has been such a trailblazer and a catalyst for her talk radio show, Moments of Clarity,
Yes.
for many years,
Many
and the
years.
work that she did. And it really was through Tiffany that I met her, through such amazing platforms, and met you and Kirk. And it, like you said, it was this beautiful symphony of people that are caring, that want to make changes, and to educate people to live better lives and more positive lives. So it's such an honor, really, Larry, to have you on again. It's always such a pleasure, and I enjoy conversation with you. And like Tiffany, you will definitely be a regular on my podcast because I'd love to hear what you're doing this summer. So we'll circle back and have you back on.
I
But
can tell you that in 30 seconds. So there's this group of EP pros that I'm working with,
yeah,
two different companies. So one company, there's 5 classes that are going to be in different cities in the U.S. So next month we'll be in D.C. In April we'll be in Houston. May we're going to be in Chicago. In June we'll be in New York City, and then in August we'll be in Miami.
wow,
And so these are like 5-day trainings. I do one of the days, like the second to the last day, and I teach these EP professionals the medical essentials portion on
hmm,
stuff that we were talking about earlier, because you got these clients and, stuff happens with them also. We see it on these, reels and all this stuff or whatever, where these people are going on the stage and attacking these artists and all kind
yeah,
of other stuff. So it's like, how do we deal with these situations when somebody's hurt, injured, dying, or dead? And it's not just that, because I talk about all kind of stuff with mental health and men's mental health, different things like that. I need to have you back on to deal. I want to talk about the Reiki with the horses and
mm,
how you utilize that with clients, because you
yeah.
kind of we kind of talk about it a little, but we didn't really go into it.
That's a whole different conversation, which is pretty cool, amazing. Horses are magical, so are animals, and they're so powerful. We don't give them enough credit
Yeah,
because we need our animals here on the planet to get us through.
that's right.
So,
My
but
wife grew up with horses, and we're talking about going to the Outer Banks here in North Carolina to Corolla, where they got these
oh,
wild horses.
nice.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you'll have to share how that
Oh,
goes. I'm
yeah,
sure it's going to be awesome. So,
absolutely.
Larry, for everybody that's listening, our viewers, our listeners, how can people reach out to you? How can they contact you?
My social media on IG is at LP Firemedic, at LP Firemedic. Our company has a IG page called Penton underscore pending underscore CS is in Consulting Solutions. You can look me up on Facebook and Twitter. My name is Larry Penton, or on Meta is Larry Cooper Penton, which is a joke. We talked about that earlier. Uh, you can also email me consultingsolutions at pentonpending.com. Now, we're doing some changes with the website, but the website is pentonpending.com. And also our podcast, Trigger Warning Talk Podcast, all 4 words, is streaming on all the major platforms. You can watch the interviews like Leslie's interview. You can watch it in 2 places, Spotify and our YouTube channel, which is the company's name. And so definitely reach out to me if you want us come out and do any training or podcast interviews or what have you. The last thing is I was featured in an article in U.S. News and World Reports.
Wow.
This article came out, and it was an honor too. It came out August 19th of 2019. It's still available online. It's called Diversity Emergency. So if you go to usnews.com and type in the search box Diversity Emergency, you'll see the article that I'm featuring in. It features me, my former medical director, and the guy that got me into EMS. And it talks about the lack of diversity and how that affects emergency medicine. You know what, Leslie? That article so far, the last time I counted, has spawned 40 international peer-reviewed case studies, and
Wow.
still growing. And more studies like this are coming out because diversity matters. We
Yeah.
can't tolerate people.
Yeah.
We have to accept everybody. And that's how we get to our humanity, by doing stuff like that. Because if I need a kitty, I need one human being that is a match and a willing donor. Doesn't matter if it's you, Leslie, a white woman,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a black man. It doesn't matter. I'm getting a donor. I'm getting a person who's donating a kitty that's a match, one
Yeah.
human to another. I'm not getting it from a goat or a giraffe. I'm getting it from one human to another. If, and that might be an oversimplification, but it proves the point. We need each other. We don't have a separate race. We have different ethnicities, nationalities, but we're all part of the human race. And if we're going to, because we're all on this big blue marble, and if you live to be a million times infinity, you won't meet everybody. So the people that you encounter, don't show them your best representative. Be truly a human with humanity. LPL.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Again, thank you for taking the time out to be on my show.
Time for you.
And we will circle back, reconnect. And for all my viewers and listeners, thank you for listening and supporting my show. And remember, get out there, ground with Mother Earth, and keep it dirty.
That's right.